Oh man. Ziggy, where am I? You're in El Segundo, California. Calm down. Why do you sound like Jerry Seinfeld? Oh, your name's Bob Raffi. You're a veteran in the games industry. You left your former employer 3 years ago to start your own company. Company? Ziggy, what year is it? It's 2012, Sam. It's 2012. Holy shit. You know, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say sometimes I wonder what the fuck is going on at Sega. I think the last fun Sonic game we saw like on anything was Sonic Mania. It always kind of felt to me like the Western market and fans and stuff really got Sonic and kind of knew what they wanted from it more than the Japanese studios actually did. Some of the most beloved entries into the Sonic franchise are American made, like the old Sad AM cartoon, the one with Sally Acorn, Sonic Mania, hell, even Sonic 2 and 3, which were designed by Japanese developers working in San Francisco, were widely regarded as the definitive experience for classic Sonic games. Something about that old red, white, and blue always spells success for our little blue friend. So why is it that Sega doesn't allow more American and other Western developers to create more content for the Sonic franchise? Well, for starters, Sega and Sonic Team are run by Japanese boomers who don't really understand what their audience wants from the Sonic stuff at all. Hell, they don't really seem to understand video games. And that's just the offices in Japan. Sega of America is run by people like former President Simon Jeffrey, who think that Sonic isn't cool if you're over 12 years old. And while there maybe is some truth to that, it doesn't have to be that way. Even though the bulk of Sonic fans probably got into it when they were 12 or under, most of the Sonic fans that exist today are young adults or middle-aged men, a small percentage of which are probably normally functioning people who are not on the spectrum, as they say, and they don't relentlessly talk about Sonic, and they're pretty well adjusted socially to some degree. Maybe somebody at Sega somewhere had some kind of a fucking epiphany around the 2000s. Maybe that's why Sonic was going through all these weird, outlandish sort of adaptations and stuff around that time period. Because Lord knows they do not want to touch that old Sad AM Sally Acorn shit with the games, ever. And if you don't know why that is, you should check out this other video I made on the guy who basically terrified Sega into never using these concepts or settings again. So where was Sega to turn? They were looking to take Sonic in a new direction, and so far nothing, not even furries, fantasy, or Final Fantasy pandering kind of stuff would stick to this. Sonic Team was a laughing stock of the game mascots world, and their fans were regarded as autistic children and lolcows. Well, for whatever reason, sometime around 2010, Sega turned to a small LA-based independent game company that was mostly staffed by Naughty Dog vets called Big Red Button. Now, why did they do this? Well, we don't really know. I like to imagine that there's some kind of multi-list system somewhere that these developers put their games up and people bid on the jobs sometimes to make the actual games that they want to outsource to another developer. And Bob Raffi and those guys actually made this company maybe to make a legitimate bid that wasn't just, hey, we're a group of developers, and they could actually say, hey, we're an actual company in LA. We're making games. We've been making games for years. Here's our bid. But there's really no evidence to suggest that any of that happened or anything. It's just my headcanon. Here we go, kids. Buckle up. We're about to hit the timeline. June 2010. Small LA-based developer Big Red Button, founded by Bob Raffi of Jak and Daxter Crash Bandicoot fame and Jeff Lander, who worked on Shrek 2, the game, assigned a small group, or perhaps maybe even a single individual out of their staff of around allegedly 14 people, to start working on concept art for several unannounced projects, one or more of which was being worked on by one Eaton Zana. I know I'm not saying that right, who would go on to work at Naughty Dog only a month later. Zana was later thanked by another Big Red Button employee on Facebook, Nicholas Villarreal, for working on concepts for Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. He only worked for Big Red Button, reportedly, in June of 2010. This places the actual initial concept work for Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric in June of 2010. Shortly after Zana was hired, an alleged mass exodus or layoff happened at Big Red Button, in which, according to someone claiming to be Chris Sin, a former employee of Big Red Button and a former level implementer on the now canceled Sonic Extreme, some employees did all they could to stay, but in the end had to leave or were terminated against their own will. In fact, the web archive shows that Big Red Button was having a little trouble keeping important positions filled from 2010 all the way to 2014, the period of which Rise of Lyric was the only announced developed project for this tiny studio. Positions like Senior Combat Designer and Senior Level Designer. Two pretty fucking important things you need. October 2011. Technical development reportedly starts by Big Red Button on Sonic Origins, a new Sonic canon and game with a focus on multiplayer, exploration, and racing. Built on CryEngine 3 for some reason. No one seems to remember any games by Big Red Button being produced before they began or completed Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. And if this is true, this would make Rise of Lyric their first completed game as a company, which breaks my fucking heart. Bob Raffy is an amazing artist, a workhorse. Apparently he's really great to work with, really easy to get along with. And this is the shit sandwich he was handed as a developer, like right out of the fucking gate after he breaks off from mainstream and does his own independent company. God damn. Despite their company being newly formed and obviously going through some growing pains and their strange choice of engine, Big Red Button is given quite a bit of creative control over the design of the project by Sega directly. So much so that Bob Raffy was quoted as saying, "We were given a lot more freedom than I anticipated. Right from the start, we worked closely with Sega to determine what worked and, more importantly, what was off limits." Late 2012. A trailer is released, showing a beautiful, vibrant world with new looks for all the characters, which got mixed reviews, and displaying some of the new movement and combat mechanics. Sega shows this vertical slice tech demo, now called Synergy, to Nintendo. And Nintendo asks, "Hey, can we port this game to Wii U?" Sega having to fulfill a contract with Nintendo for 3 exclusive Sonic games, 2 of which, Sonic Lost World and Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Sochi Games 2014. Okay, who is playing those games had already been completed. They agree to have Big Red Button port this resource-heavy game to Wii U on CryEngine 3, a system it has no business even attempting to be on. In addition, for some reason, Sega also agreed to have a developer create a version of this game that would play on 3DS. Allegedly, development of the 3DS game was also going to be handled by Big Red Button, but for some reason, likely due to the fact that porting the CryEngine 3 based game to Wii U, an engine that was almost never used for games on Wii U and arguably was the most incompatible with its hardware at the time, and still is today, and continuing to work out the remaining development on the game left very little time for the small studio to take on a brand new game as well. The 3DS entries in the Sonic Boom series were entrusted to Sanzaku Games, the same fine folks who have brought us incredible HD remakes of classic games like Sly Cooper and Spyro. All of this news allegedly came as a big surprise to Big Red Button. This is where Rise of Lyric went down the shitter. Mid-2013. Little more than a year before the release date of the game, the shining original build is completely shelved and the Wii U porting begins. Big Red Button finds inevitable roadblocks with trying to force CryEngine 3, an EA-owned engine built for PC shooter games that doesn't support local co-op comforts like split screens, into the Wii U's already comparatively subpar and third-party unfriendly hardware that they were being forced to port their platformer Sonic game into. They had such a hard time cramming their triangle block into the cycle that they had to contact both Nintendo and Crytek multiple times to get this to even barely work. Reportedly, this is where the layoffs and stuff got the worst. Many employees either left or were fired or were laid off as a result of the ever-tightening budgets and the lack of work-life balance. Allegedly, people were working like 6-day work weeks, 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, like just crazy shit like a union would probably fucking have a fit over. Bob Raffy reportedly stated in an interview at E3 2014 that Sega was pleasantly surprised with their results and that they were able to successfully modify the engine to make it work with Wii U. E3 2014 was also the last time Big Red Button ever talked about Rise of Lyric on their website or Facebook, supposedly. They never posted any updates that I can find about Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, or any sales or pre-order information for that year. It's not clear whether or not this decision was made by Big Red Button, and it's entirely possible that Sega wanted to handle all the press and marketing for the game. We may never know, but it's still a little odd that the people who built this game from nothing kinda just stopped talking about it. Let's rewind a second back to 2013, around the times this stuff started getting ported. Sega has another little surprise for Big Red Button. Sometime prior to this, a group of showrunners producers were apparently developing a TV show for Sonic Boom under Sonic Team's supervision. Suddenly, Sega gives the showrunners and producers for this TV show full creative control over the Sonic Origins Synergy property and announces the TV show with a public trailer on October 2nd. And those TV show producers made some glaring changes. They're the reason Knuckles is a big dumb himbo character. They also made some unspecified big storyline changes, but we know that it included the focus of the game shifting much farther away from the Ancients, characters who in the original storyline of Sonic Origins were masters of technology and magic in the past. The titular villain, Lyric, was one of these Ancients, and they also requested many more characters be included in the game that were either previously completely absent from it or never heard of before. Initially, Sonic and most of the other player characters would have the ability to swim in the video game and dive underwater. However, at some point, Sonic Team stepped in and forced the developers to make Sonic and friends die on contact with the water. What the fuck? But that's not all Sonic Team had to say. Oh no! Many changes were made to several characters in the game to make them all look more like their legacy versions. Originally, the character Cliff was an inventor, but he had to be changed to an archaeologist instead. As Sonic Team said, only Tails and Eggman can be inventors. Sonic Team outright denied Big Red Button the right to tell the Sonic Origins storyline also, allegedly due to Big Red Button's plan to portray the story from a point of view of the characters from the future. But the word on the street is that Big Red Button was told that Sonic's origins, originally interpreted in the story, would be explained one day by Sonic Team, but not today, and not by Big Red Button. Gameplay changes. No more rock climbing, no more using your friends as slingshots, no water skiing or running on the water, no chows. 4-player co-op is now 2-player co-op. Eggman is no longer a playable character. The character gadget upgrade system is scrapped. Gameplay now focuses on speed rather than exploration. And of course, no more swimming. Most of these mechanics were dropped either due to the arbitrary limitations of Sonic Team and Sega, or because the sudden porting to Wii U meant that either the hardware couldn't handle them or they wouldn't have enough time to work around porting them. Almost all the creative freedom that Sega initially okayed for Raffi's company had been crumpled up, shoved up a goat's ass, and farted into orbit. As you can see in the old trailer, originally the game had beautiful, organic-looking set pieces and textures, as one of the pillars of the game was to encourage players to explore the in-game world and discover things organically. However, this was all scrapped due to the Wii U being unable to handle it because it was a piece of fucking shit, and the visuals. Oh my god, the visuals. One mechanic was actually planned for the port to Wii U, which was using the touchscreen to do things like control golem robots and move platforms around. That sounds exciting, right? Well, due to the issues with programming for the Wii U and time constraints, they got dropped too. There was also originally an airship chase stage of the game where Tails chased down Lyric, the game's villain, in his airship to get to the final showdown at the game's climax. This stage was found by testers to be really boring, and they didn't really have time to improve it, so they just threw it away. An entire stage called Crater Lake that had gameplay focused on Tails, Knuckles, and Amy all water skiing behind Sonic as he ran across the surface of the water as you fought a giant worm was completely put in the trash. November 11th, 2014. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric is finally released in North America. Only Sega had provided no reviewers with advanced copies. Ooh. And no one, even those who were closely following the game's development, knew quite what to expect. The day of release, the mixed reviews from E3 of 2014 had completely soured. No one, anywhere, liked this game. Metacritic had the game listed as a 32%, the lowest score of any Sonic game ever to be released prior. Less than half of Black Knight's sales, the worst in Sonic's 23-year stretch. Don Sass of GameSpot says that it had a repetitive level design, dull puzzle solving, numerous bugs, and uninspired combat system. And goes on to add, through a combination of unwieldy controls, a broken camera system, and total lack of responsiveness, the platforming and exploration elements of Rise of Lyric are totally unworkable. Game Central's David Jenkins damned it as definitely the worst game of 2014. It seemed that this once brilliant-looking game, maybe even a Sonic game that even non-Sonic fans might have enjoyed and played, did not survive its port to Wii U and hackneyed sudden Frankenstein stitching to this TV show. Both current and ex-employees ignored questions about the game on social media, and Rise of Lyric went to its final resting place in the bargain bin of local brick-and-mortar game stores. It's really a fucking shame, man, because this game, originally it was planned for a Steam release, and it looked good. There were a lot of people who didn't like, some of the new designs for the characters, all the weird sports tape and shit. I don't know what that's about. But Sega saw an opportunity to complete a contract with Nintendo. And because they are old boomer businessmen, they had no idea what that would mean for their developer. Or they just had a total disregard for all the work they had done and their sanity. They completely threw Big Red Button under the bus so that they could satisfy a business deal that they didn't even have to use this for. And in the process, they completely ruined a Sonic game that might have actually been really different and fresh and good. Imagine being Bob Raffi in 2012. You've just broken away from the man. You started your own business in California. And the first contract you're able to nail down is a new Sonic game. Even if you're not the biggest fan of Sonic, you have to admit, starting your own company and then just getting this contract to work on one of the biggest, most longest running franchises in video game history, it's like getting a contract to do a fucking Mario game. That's huge. That's like striking gold in your backyard. You bust your ass to the best of your ability, you survive all the growing pains of your new business, and you make something new and fresh that almost everybody is excited about, only for Sonic Team and Sega to come in right at the fucking finish line and tell you that you've been making the wrong game all along. Oh no! Even though they told you to keep doing exactly what you've been doing for 2 fucking years because you've been talking to them about what you can and can't do. That would be like if Pope Julius II came up right as Michelangelo was finishing the Sistine Chapel ceiling mural and was like, hey dude, you painted Jesus with white skin and brown hair? Okay, well, whatever, but we need this all to be redone by this time next year. And also, he needs to have black skin and blonde hair. Oh, and it's also got to be playable on Wii U. Fuck you. One mystery still remains that I think is definitely worth noting, though. Why in the hell did Big Red Button think that CryEngine 3 would be the engine they needed to use for this game? I mean, put aside everything about them being forced by Sega to port this thing to Wii U. CryEngine is made for shooters. And according to everybody I know who makes games, nobody likes CryEngine. Nobody likes to use it. At game jams and shit, they'll have like different engines you can choose from, and they almost always have CryEngine there, but they always tell people, well, you can use that if you want to, but, I wouldn't recommend it. And Bob Raffi and his team, to my knowledge, weren't exactly people who, had extensive experience using this engine, at least going by their track record with Naughty Dog. It reeks to me that someone invested in CryEngine or EA or whatever, Crytek, had Bob Raffi's ear, if only for a second. Or maybe they just offered him a good sale. I mean, this engine is made for shooters, and the game had a focus on platforming and exploration and local multiplayer. 2 things CryEngine isn't even known to do very well, even on PC. It seems like every single time some American makes a good Sonic game, Sega has to jump in right at the finish line and fuck it up for everybody. It could be argued that they even did this with Sonic Mania, as it's widely accepted that Sonic Team and Sega were both eternally ass blasted about people looking forward to their Mania game more than their own in-house Sonic forces. They reportedly put a lot of pressure on Christian Whitehead to link the storylines between Mania and Forces, even though there was no real need to do that, and no one benefited from it at all. It could even be said that Sega is the reason old school Sonic fans won't ever get to see the characters from other Sonic canons back in the games and comics ever again, as they issued all those strange and sometimes not even public mandates after the conclusions of the cases with Ken Penders and Archie. Despite the fact that Ken doesn't actually own most of these characters, and they could just use them in a new setting, or Are they just restricting artists and studios from doing so themselves? Or is the settlement between Ken and Archie somehow restricting this itself? Given their track record of never including these Sad AM characters, which are still owned by them as far as we know, in any games before, it's not hard to imagine that they are just still angry that this American creation is more memorable and more beloved by more people than anything that's come out of Japan studios in fucking 20 years. My money's on it having nothing to do with Ken Penders. They can't stand to watch this positive influence that these characters and creations have on people just stick to the audience and actually become like loved and lucrative. Something that Sega of Japan and Sonic Team have not been able to accomplish in decades. Now combine all this with the way they put pressure on Christian Whitehead to link the stories between Mania and Forces. His story to their story, even though there's no real reason to do that. And how they completely threw Big Red Button under the bus when they were clearly experiencing their own growing pains as a new small developer. And you start to see a pattern. And the pattern goes like this. Non-Japanese people develop a Sonic property legally. Sega and Sonic Team allow this property to develop, and they give a lot of creative freedom to the artists that are working on it. People, be they fans or otherwise, get excited for this new entry. And then Sega and Sonic Team step in right at the end of development almost and just completely fuck everything up or try to put pressure on the people who are making the game to make these weird outlandish changes that don't really benefit the game or any other property in any fucking way. So who is to blame for this colossal clusterfuck? Well, some people argue that Big Red Button still had a big hand in its failure, or were the majority of the reason the game actually did fail. They were clearly having some problems of their own, and they made some weird decisions throughout its development, and Ilphonic was even hired at some point to help out. But the reason I say that it's completely bullshit to blame Big Red Button for the state the game ended up in on its release is because they had a perfectly working version that worked on PC architecture, and it didn't turn into a pile of shit until they had to port it to Wii U, which was not their decision. Hell, even Nintendo looked at this game and was like, hey, can we have this on Wii U? This looks great. Though they did also have Sonic and Mario at the Olympic Games 2014. So I guess that's not really saying much. But Sega and Sonic Team, they are the ones who stepped in right at the end and said, oh, by the way, this entire game has to be ported to this thing that it's not going to probably fucking even work on. You'll figure it out, right? You guys are computer dudes. You're computer nerds. You'll figure it out, right? You'll make it work. Completely cutting them off at the fucking knees with this game. Having these TV show producers and Sonic Team come in and make all these changes right before the game was supposed to come out, and setting all these mandates up years before that don't allow the characters to show too much emotion or have a relationship with people. Whoa. Now, it's normal for an IP owner to make changes to a product, whether it be a game, a show, whatever, even during the development process. But you guys make almost no changes, no restrictions, anything like that until the very ass end of this, like a year before the game is supposed to come out. These guys, these developers, in their head, they're like, we got a year to get all these bugs and stuff worked out before we actually release the game and get everything working. This plane scene will make it more exciting and less boring and blah, blah, blah. And then somebody comes to the office and they're like, oh, by the way, we need you to port all this stuff to Wii U. It's not going to be on PC now. Fucking imagine being that on Big Red Button. Just think about that for a second. Just think about it. Sega, why in the hell can't you just let us Gaijin make good Sonic games for you guys? You know that we can do it better than you. Why won't you just give us a fair shot and let us make some shit for you, man? You'll make money. We'll make cool games. People will like Sonic again. What is the problem with that? I personally blame Sega 150 fucking % for this fucking travesty of a game that came out on Wii U. And I don't even really consider myself to be like an avid Sonic fan. This is just a tragic story. I mean, like, I liked the Sad AM shit as a kid. I thought that was a really cool cartoon. Sit there and eat my Franco-American Sonic SpaghettiOs and meatballs. But I never really sought out any of the games or even got to play them very much. I only really ever got to play games of Sonic and stuff if a friend had it on Genesis or whatever. But I liked the way this game looked, and the co-op shit and stuff looked like it would be fun too. Like, I was planning on getting this. But if Sega announced a game by an outside developer that already liked games they produced, and I don't know, maybe they even had a cool American flavor, I don't know, maybe like Platinum Games. And they announce like, this game is going to be made by the people who brought you Beautiful Joe. This game is going to be made by the people who brought you Bayonetta. It's a Sonic game. And guess what else, guys? It's also going to have fucking Sally Acorn and all those people from the Sad AM, Bunny Robot, Antoine with his goofy French accent. Rob Paulson's gonna play him. That would be a day one for me. I wouldn't even care if the game fucking was buggy or glitchy or whatever. I mean, that would be a shame if that was the case, but because Platinum Games is making it, I would think they would QA test the fucking game a little bit. But just the fact that that got made and maybe would be fun apart from any kind of flaws it might have, that would be historic for me. Like, I would fucking buy that. The only way I wouldn't buy it is if they didn't give advanced copies to reviewers. Sega, listen to me right now, okay? Because I have better ideas than you. I don't know how I do, but I do have better ideas than you. Obviously. Make this game again. Whatever it takes to make it, make it. Make a game that's like this. Hire Big Red Button again. And let them actually make the game. People will eat this shit up. You will see numbers and sales like you have not seen in the last 20 years. Your investors will be licking your scrotum like fucking ice cream, okay? Just give somebody who actually likes Sonic and can make a good game a chance to do that without you interfering and changing it into something it doesn't need to be, or making some kind of weird little thing where they got to link a thing to your game or whatever. Just declare it a separate canon and just let them make their fucking game and let it sell and let it move on. This is what people want. This is what people are looking forward to for fucking Sonic stuff. We don't want Sonic turning into a werewolf or him having armor and a sword and shit like that. We don't want whatever the fuck Sonic 06 was. Whoa, what do you guys think? Do you play Big Red Button or Sonic? Let me know in the comments below, okay? But seriously, do you think Sonic Boom should get a second chance without all these stupid restrictions and bullshit? Do you think that Big Red Button should get another chance to make something like this, like they originally intended to make? And if so, do you think it would be a good game, and do you think it would be a record breaker for Sonic game sales? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more of these stupid videos. If you really like what you see, check out my Patreon. You can get your name in the credits and access to my Discord server for only $1. And if you like my stupid voice, check out my demo reel in the description. I do voice acting work, and I even do like video editing and sound engineering shit too. You can hire me. That's my piece. Peace!